The next Mercury outboard you buy might not be a Mercury at all. For over 30 years, America's most famous marine engine brand has been hiding a secret. The small outboards that built Mercury's reputation? They were designed, engineered, and manufactured by a Japanese company most boaters have never heard of. But here's where the story takes a turn nobody saw coming. That same company didn't just build Mercury's engines. They were quietly preparing to become Mercury's biggest threat. One factory, two rivals, and a partnership that's about to get very, very complicated. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you don't miss the secrets the marine industry doesn't want you to know. Now here's my question for you. Have you ever owned an outboard that wasn't what you thought it was? Drop your answer in the comments. By the end of this video, you might be surprised. This is the untold story of how an underdog rose from the ashes of bankruptcy. 2. Challenge an American icon on its own turf. Let's start with the fact that most Mercury dealers won't volunteer when you walk through their doors. Every Mercury outboard under 60 horsepower is built by Tohatsu. Not designed in partnership, not assembled with Tohatsu parts. Built entirely by Tohatsu, in a Tohatsu factory, by Tohatsu engineers, in the mountains of central Japan. This isn't speculation. This isn't a conspiracy theory whispered on boating forums. This is the reality of how the marine industry actually works. In 1987, Brunswick Corporation, the American conglomerate that owns Mercury Marine, made a decision that would reshape the outboard market for decades. They formed a joint venture with a Japanese company called Tohatsu Corporation. The new entity was named Tohatsu Marine Corporation, and its purpose was simple but profound. Tohatsu would design and manufacture Mercury's entire small outboard lineup. The logic made sense from a business perspective. Mercury had built its reputation on high horsepower, machines, the roaring V6 engines, the legendary racing heritage, the big offshore powerhouses that made Mercury a household name. But small outboards? The 9.9 horsepower kickers? The portable 15 horsepower motors for aluminum fishing boats? Those were high-volume, low-margin products that required significant research and development investment. Japanese manufacturers had already proven they could build these engines better and cheaper than anyone else. So Mercury outsourced the job to a specialist, and Tohatsu was more than happy to take it. Walk into any Mercury dealer today and point to a 9.9 horsepower four-stroke. That engine was made by Tohatsu. Point to a 15. Tohatsu. A 20. Tohatsu. A 25 or 30 horsepower outboard with the famous Mercury logo. All of them built in the same factory in Komagane City, Japan. The arrangement goes even deeper than most people realize. Motors under 20 horsepower are designed primarily by Tohatsu's engineering teams. Motors between 20 and 30 horsepower are collaborative efforts between both companies. And as of 2022, this partnership extends all the way up to 60 horsepower. That means the majority of Mercury outboards sold in America for small and mid-sized boats come from a single Japanese factory that most American boaters have never heard of. And what a factory it is! The Tohatsu Marine Corporation facility sits in Komagane City, nestled in Nagano Prefecture, surrounded by the Japanese Alps. It covers more than 370,000 square feet of manufacturing space. Its annual production capacity exceeds 200,000 outboard motors. To put that in perspective, this single facility can produce more outboards in 1 year than most manufacturers produce in 5. Before the Mercury partnership began, Tohatsu was producing between 40 and 50,000 outboard motors annually. After the deal was signed, that number exploded to between 170 and 180,000 units per year. The partnership transformed Tohatsu from a respected regional manufacturer into a global production powerhouse. By January of 2018, Tohatsu's cumulative production had exceeded 4 million outboard motors. That's more engines than any other single outboard factory in the world has ever produced. Here's the irony that makes this story so fascinating. For years, American boaters have praised Mercury's reliability in the small outboard segment. They've argued passionately on forums about whether Mercury or Tohatsu builds a better portable motor. They've compared specs, debated features, and defended their brand loyalty with conviction. What many of them never realized is that they were comparing the same engine with different paint jobs. The Mercury was a Tohatsu. The Tohatsu was a Mercury. Same factory, same engineers, same assembly line, different cowling color, and different price tag. Now, if you're wondering how a company you've barely heard of ended up building engines for America's largest outboard manufacturer, we need to travel back in time, and I mean way back, to 1922, in a small workshop in Tokyo, where a group of engineers were tinkering with internal combustion engines without any idea of the empire they would eventually build. The company that would become Tohatsu started life as the Takata Motor Research Institute. In those early years, their focus wasn't on boats at all. They built engines for rail cars that served Japan's Ministry of Railways. They developed portable power generators. They experimented with anything that could burn fuel and produce motion. This was a company obsessed with engineering, with making things work reliably under pressure, with solving mechanical problems that others couldn't crack. By 1939, the company had been renamed Tokyo Hatsudoki Corporation. The name literally translates to Tokyo Engine Factory, which tells you everything about their identity. They were engine builders first and foremost. When World War II erupted, Tohatsu pivoted to military production. They manufactured portable generators for field radio units. They built auxiliary engines for tanks. They supplied the Japanese war effort with the kind of compact, reliable power systems that could survive battlefield conditions. When the war ended and Japan began rebuilding, Tohatsu faced the same question every manufacturer confronted. What do we build now? The answer came in 1950, when the company entered the motorcycle market. And here's where the story takes an unexpected turn that most people don't know about. By 1956, Tohatsu wasn't just making motorcycles, they were dominating the entire Japanese market. Tohatsu held 22% of all motorcycle sales in Japan, making them the largest motorcycle manufacturer in the country. To understand how remarkable that is, consider this. At that time, Tohatsu was selling twice as many motorcycles as Honda. Yes, that Honda. The company that would eventually become the world's largest motorcycle manufacturer was playing second fiddle to Tohatsu in 1956. Tohatsu even competed in Grand Prix motorcycle racing, fielding 50 and 125cc twin-cylinder machines that raced against the best in the world. For a brief, shining moment, Tohatsu looked unstoppable. But empires built on ambition can crumble just as fast as they rise. Tohatsu expanded aggressively throughout the late 1950s, borrowing heavily to fund new factories and new product lines. The competition was evolving rapidly. Honda, Yamaha, and Suzuki were modernizing their designs at a pace Tohatsu couldn't match. The debt piled up. The sales slowed down. By 1960, the Japanese government had to intervene through something called the Rehabilitation Act, arranging for Tohatsu to be acquired by Fuji Electric Manufacturing Corporation in a desperate attempt to save the company. It wasn't enough. In 1964, Tohatsu declared bankruptcy. Motorcycle production ceased entirely. The company that had once dominated Japan's two-wheeled transportation market was finished, or so it seemed. Because here's the twist that saved Tohatsu from disappearing into history. Back in 1956, the same year they reached the peak of their motorcycle dominance, a separate division within the company achieved something that would prove far more important in the long run. A team of Tohatsu engineers built Japan's first domestically designed outboard motor. It was called the OB2. A humble 1.5 horsepower two-stroke engine. Nothing fancy, nothing revolutionary, just a small, reliable motor that could push a fishing boat through coastal waters. While the motorcycle business collapsed around them, the marine division quietly survived. And over the next 3 decades, that tiny outboard division would grow into something extraordinary. The marine division that survived Tohatsu's bankruptcy wasn't building engines for weekend pleasure boaters or water skiing enthusiasts. They were building motors for a far more demanding customer, the Japanese commercial fishing fleet. Think about what that means for a moment. Commercial fishermen don't care about brand prestige. They don't care about sleek cowling designs or digital displays. They care about one thing above all else. Will this engine start when I need it to start? Will it run all day, every day, in saltwater conditions that would destroy lesser machines? Will it bring me home when I'm 50 miles offshore and a storm is rolling in? These fishermen needed bulletproof reliability. And Tohatsu delivered exactly that. The company's engineering philosophy was shaped by these early customers. No unnecessary electronics. No complicated features that could fail. Just solid mechanical design, quality materials, and engines that could be repaired by a fisherman with basic tools. This DNA would define Tohatsu for decades to come. While competitors chased horsepower numbers and flashy technology, Tohatsu focused on building motors that simply refused to quit. Word spread beyond Japan's fishing villages. By the 1970s and 1980s, Tohatsu outboards were powering boats in Southeast Asia, Africa, South America, and the Pacific Islands. Commercial operators in some of the harshest marine environments on Earth discovered what Japanese fishermen already knew. Tohatsu engines just worked. The company expanded into other demanding markets, military operations, surf life-saving organizations in Australia and Japan, search and rescue teams. These were customers who couldn't afford a breakdown, customers whose lives depended on their equipment functioning perfectly under pressure. Tohatsu earned their trust through decades of consistent performance. They also diversified beyond marine engines. Tohatsu became a major manufacturer of portable fire pumps, supplying fire departments around the world with equipment that could mean the difference between saving a building and watching it burn. This wasn't a company interested in glamour. This was a company interested in reliability, in building tools that worked when the stakes were highest. By the mid-1980s, Tohatsu had developed a reputation among professionals as the fisherman's motor. Mechanics in coastal towns whispered about how Tohatsu engines were easier to service and more resilient than the competition. Charter boat captains shared stories of Tohatsu outboards running season after season without major repairs. This was a brand built on word of mouth, on the testimony of people who depended on their engines for their livelihoods. But Tohatsu faced a fundamental challenge. They had the engineering expertise. They had the manufacturing capability. They had a product that professionals trusted. What they didn't have was marketing muscle. While Yamaha was spending millions on advertising, campaigns, and sponsoring high-profile racing events, Tohatsu was quietly building engines in their factory in the Japanese Alps. The Mercury partnership changed everything. When Brunswick Corporation came calling in 1987, they weren't just offering Tohatsu a manufacturing contract. They were offering access to the largest marine distribution network in North America. They were offering a crash course in American consumer marketing. They were offering stable, predictable production volume that would allow Tohatsu to invest in new facilities and new technology. Tohatsu gained something else from the partnership that proved equally valuable. Working with Mercury's stringent quality requirements pushed Tohatsu to refine their manufacturing processes even further. It was like attending a corporate finishing school. Every engine that rolled off the Komagon line had to meet American expectations, American warranty standards, American regulatory requirements. Tohatsu rose to the challenge, and their own product lineup improved as a result. But partnerships built on mutual benefit can develop cracks when one partner starts to outgrow the arrangement. For more than 2 decades, the Mercury-Tohatsu arrangement worked beautifully for both companies. Mercury got world-class small outboards without the research and development headaches. Tohatsu got stable production volume and learned the American market. Everyone was happy. Then came October 2011, and everything changed. Bombardier Recreational Products, the Canadian company that owned Evinrude, made a surprise announcement. They had signed a deal with Tohatsu Corporation to source portable outboards ranging from 3.5 to 15 horsepower. These engines would fill out the Evinrude product line, giving their dealers access to small motors they had been lacking. Mercury was blindsided. A company spokesperson told industry press they were disappointed with Tohatsu's decision. And you can understand why. The factory that built Mercury's small outboards was now going to build engines for a direct competitor. Paint it black, it's a Mercury. Paint it blue, it's an Evinrude. Same motor, different marketing budgets, competing for the same customers. Tohatsu defended the arrangement by pointing out that the Evinrude deal was through Tohatsu Corporation, not the joint venture Tohatsu Marine Corporation. Mercury retained priority access to TMC production. The legal separation was clean, but the strategic implications were impossible to ignore. Tohatsu was no longer content to be a silent partner hiding behind other brands. They were flexing their manufacturing muscle, and the industry took notice. What came next raised the stakes even higher. Tohatsu had a gap in their product lineup that had always limited their ability to compete independently. Their own brand four-stroke engines topped out at 50 horsepower. If you wanted a Tohatsu-branded motor for a larger boat, you were out of luck. Mercury, Yamaha, and Suzuki dominated the high-horsepower segment, and Tohatsu couldn't touch them. In 2013, Tohatsu announced a partnership that closed that gap overnight. Honda Motor Company would supply four-stroke outboards from 60 to 250 horsepower, rebadged and sold under the Tohatsu name. Suddenly, Tohatsu wasn't just a small motor specialist anymore. They could offer a complete lineup from 2.5 horsepower all the way up to 250. The company that had spent decades building Mercury's small motors could now compete with Mercury across the entire product range. But Tohatsu wasn't satisfied with selling rebadged engines forever. In their research and development facility in Kamagane, engineers were working on something that would truly establish Tohatsu as an independent force. They were designing proprietary high-performance engines that would carry no one else's DNA. The first major breakthrough came with the MFS 60A, a 60-horsepower four-stroke designed entirely in-house. It was the lightest engine in its class when released, proving that Tohatsu could innovate at the cutting edge, not just manufacture other companies' designs. Then came the Generation A series, and this is where things get really interesting. Tohatsu introduced a lineup of 75, 90, 100, 115, and eventually 140 horsepower engines, featuring technology no other manufacturer offered. Their 4-2-1 performance-tuned exhaust system used equal-length exhaust passages for each cylinder, optimizing torque throughout the entire RPM range. These weren't rebadged anything. These were pure Tohatsu engineering. The 140 horsepower model weighs just over 400 pounds and outperforms competitors' 150 horsepower engines that weigh 100 pounds more. Tohatsu had achieved what seemed impossible, building high-performance motors that could challenge the established giants while maintaining the reliability their brand was built on. And here's a detail that really illustrates how the competitive dynamics have shifted. Tohatsu upgraded their 25-horsepower engine to a 2.17:1 gear ratio for dramatically improved holeshot and acceleration. Mercury's version of the same basic engine, it stayed at 1.92:1. Tohatsu didn't share the upgrade with their partner. The student was becoming the master. The marine industry is undergoing a transformation unlike anything we've seen in decades. Electric propulsion is no longer a fantasy. It's arriving on docks and boat ramps around the world. And true to form, Tohatsu kept their research and development under wraps until they had something real to show. In February 2024, at the Miami International Boat Show, Tohatsu unveiled their first all-electric outboard. This wasn't a concept drawing or a press release promise. This was a working 6-kilowatt motor, equivalent to about 8 horsepower, developed in partnership with Ilmor Marine. If that name sounds familiar, it should. Ilmor has won more IndyCar races than any other engine builder in history. When Tohatsu wanted to enter the electric future, they partnered with racing legends. The 6-kilowatt motor features integrated tilt and trim, a touchscreen interface for system control, and multiple shaft and propeller configurations. It's designed for tenders, inflatables, and small fishing boats. But Tohatsu made clear this is just the beginning of an entire electric product family. They also displayed a 4-kilowatt prototype designed entirely in-house. This smaller motor includes a full-color LCD screen built directly into the tiller handle, showing battery level, running speed, and remaining range. Tohatsu plans to release it in 2025 for markets in the United States, Canada, and Europe. Perhaps most significantly, Tohatsu announced a joint development agreement with Honda Research and Development to collaborate on electric propulsion systems. The two Japanese companies are positioning themselves together for an electrified future, while Mercury promotes their 600 horsepower V12 Verado. As the pinnacle of internal combustion power, Tohatsu is quietly building the propulsion systems that will power the next generation of boaters. So here's the question that matters. Is Tohatsu really Mercury's biggest rival? From a brand awareness perspective, Mercury seems miles ahead. They have the advertising budgets, the racing sponsorships, the dealership networks, the name recognition that comes from decades of American marketing. Walk into any marina and ask about outboard brands. Most people will name Mercury, Yamaha, Honda, maybe Suzuki. Very few will mention Tohatsu. But look beneath the surface and a different picture emerges. Mercury has outsourced their small outboard development and manufacturing to a company that now competes directly against them. If that partnership ended tomorrow, Mercury would need years to rebuild domestic capability for motors under 60 horsepower. Tohatsu has the factory, the engineers, the designs, and increasingly the global distribution to walk away and never look back. The informed consumer is changing the equation too. YouTube videos, boating forums, and enthusiast communities have exposed the Mercury-Tohatsu connection. Value-conscious buyers are doing the math. Why pay Mercury's premium for an engine built by Tohatsu when you can buy the Tohatsu version directly, get a better warranty, and save hundreds of dollars? Commercial fishermen figured this out years ago. So did patrol boat operators, rescue services, and charter captains who can't afford breakdowns during high season. Professionals who stake their livelihoods on reliability have been choosing Tohatsu for decades. That professional endorsement is filtering down to recreational buyers who bother to do their research. Tohatsu doesn't need to beat Mercury in marketing. They just need informed buyers to ask one simple question: why am I paying more for the same engine? The rise of Tohatsu is an underdog story of resilience and reinvention. From bankruptcy to the world's second-largest outboard manufacturer, from building other companies' engines to challenging those companies in the open market, from the ashes of a failed motorcycle empire to a marine powerhouse producing over 4 million outboards. And for boaters like you and me, competition is always good news. It drives innovation, it pushes prices down, it forces every manufacturer to build better products. Got a Tohatsu story? Ever discovered you owned one without realizing it? Drop your answer in the comments below. Subscribe if you want more deep dives into the secrets behind your favorite marine brands. And until next time, may your boat ride smooth and your fish fights be epic.